Yo, dads. We like to keep the format of Modern Dadhood pretty tight, but some of our guests just warrant a longer conversation. Recently, we spoke with Kevin White, a father of one 2.5-year-old daughter, about his family and serving in the Army. Enjoy the full conversation. And to all the parents listening who are serving or who have served in the military, we genuinely appreciate your service to the country and to keeping us safe.
Kevin White, dude, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Thank you for finding time to be on Modern Dadhood.
Absolutely. I appreciate the invite and the opportunity to come talk with you guys.
So let's clear the air right out of the gate. How long have you and I known each other?
Preschool. So I think I still have the preschool picture of us somewhere. But yeah, since preschool.
Goes all the way back.
Way, way back.
Yeah. I'm slightly taller now.
Nah. All right, maybe.
So I wanted to give listeners just a little bit of context before we get too far into the meat of this episode. But you are in the military. Can you tell everybody what branch you're in?
I am. I'm an Army officer. I was commissioned out of Clemson University and have spent the last 16 years, almost 17 years on active duty. Currently stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and living in Kansas City, Missouri. Currently deployed, not really deployed, to San Antonio, Texas.
How many places do you think that you've lived?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different places that the Army sent me, and then a couple deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, over to Europe for a time, short period.
It's a lot of places.
I was going to say, I got a few passport stamps thanks to the Army.
You said you're currently deployed, but not really deployed. What do you mean by that?
So I'm on what's called a temporary duty mission. And so for this one, it's an unknown time length. And so we got a mission to come down here to San Antonio to help with what's going on right now. And so it's somewhat like a deployment in the way that we treat the operation here of shift work, 24-hour operations, much like what we've done in Afghanistan, Iraq. But again, you're stateside, and so that's kind of the big difference with what we have going on here. So it's hard to say you're deployed when you're stateside, but with what we're doing to combat the COVID virus, it's much like a deployment.
So there's no immediate physical danger to you aside from potential exposure to the virus?
Correct.
So you are married, and your wife is not in the military, correct?
She is not. She is Raina is an occupational therapist by trade and by schooling, although not doing that right now. She's a full-time stay-at-home mom and rocking that every day.
I saw the post, I think it was today, maybe yesterday on Instagram, of the very awesome zigzag balance beam that she put together.
So Raina, being an OT, she's very skilled for doing this stay-at-home mom and teaching Abrielle, our daughter, all the time. And so she's coming up with stuff all the time, and it's amazing. Like, I get the videos during the day, even when I was back at home, of things they're doing. I was like, that's awesome. I can't wait to get home so I can be a part of this. With the COVID stuff going on right now, she's finding ways to keep her entertained and teaching her something all the time. So it's pretty awesome to see that, because you're seeing it the same way I am.
And for our listeners, just some clarification. So you have one daughter, and how old is she?
She is 2.5, just turned 2.5 in March. So she is in that stage of everywhere all the time and talking constantly. So she's a lot of fun.
I want to rewind just a little bit, a couple of years. So let's go back. Your wife is pregnant. Rain is pregnant. You mean you're already in the military? You've been in the military for a while. You've already moved around all over the world. But now your wife's pregnant. Can you talk to us a little bit about the conversation that you guys had to sort of prepare yourselves for leading essentially kind of like a nomadic life? I mean, you sometimes have to pick up and move, sometimes with them, in cases like right now, sometimes without them. What were those conversations like back then at that time?
So it's hard. Raina's one of those people that loves being around her family and has a great family and great support back in Kentucky, where she's from and where we met. for me, I have a great family support as well, but that was never something that I was tied to of being at home, being close to them. When I went to school, I went 10 hours south down to Clemson from my family in Pennsylvania. And so I was used to that. That was the life that I chose, and have done for the past, 15 years, 14 years before we met. And so this was hard for her, the military lifestyle before having a child and being away from her family. And so that was something that we talked about a lot, and always tried to find a way to get back as much as we can, especially for her family. And so having a child, bringing a daughter into this was hard as well. And so it was, you don't have the support structure. You don't have the family that's close by that say, hey, I got to run to the store. I need to take a shower. Can you come over and watch her? You rely so much more on each other and the people that are your neighbors at the time. You may not know them very well, but a lot of times you build relationships very quickly, and you have to, because that's all you have a lot of times, especially when you do deployments. And so we found out we were pregnant in January and moved to DC in May. And for the first 3.5 months of that, we didn't know where we were going. We know we were moving, but we didn't know where we were going. And so that you've got that life in a suitcase mentality. And some of that is you embrace because, you want to teach that to your kids and say, hey, look, there's an adventure out there. Let's go have it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You used the word adventure. I wonder if you would have ever used that word before Aubrielle came into the picture, when you're sitting her down and saying, I got to go away for a while. How do you have that conversation? What's the language that you use to talk to her?
So 2.5, she understands a lot, and she's definitely advanced for her age. Raina's done a phenomenal job of that, getting her head on things. But 2.5 still a little bit young to truly go to that language, I think. And so with this one, and this is really the first time that I've been gone for a substantial amount of time that she recognizes it. And so the way we kind of explain this one is, hey, Daddy's got to go away for work for a while, and we'll still talk, but you won't see me for a while. And so this one wasn't as much of an adventure, because I think she'll understand it more. And the next move that we make will really be that first time that we can have that discussion and really frame it probably the way we want to kind of teach her and open her up to it.
Thinking forward, have you and your wife talked about how you might frame that for her? And I'm sure part of it depends on whether it's a deployment within the States or whether it's something where there is, a threat of harm involved. But have you thought about the language that you might use or how you might frame that to her when she's older, 4 or 5?
No, honestly, we've kind of waited on that one. 17 years in now, I've watched other guys in my organization, in my unit, that have gone through that, and it's never an easy discussion either way. And so you see, you think, oh, as the kids get older, it gets easier. Well, you have different needs. The kids have different needs at that point in time, and so it's never easy, no matter when it is. But no, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know how we would do that yet.
What kind of things are you and Raina doing to deal with the distance? And is it getting harder the longer that you're gone? Yeah,
it is. And it doesn't get easier. And the longer you're gone, you start getting into your routine, and they start getting into their routine without you. And so it's harder to integrate yourself back in without disrupting, because that's the other part you don't want to do, is they've got their routine and they've got to keep going. And she's by herself. And so you've got to kind of figure out where it is you fit in and what the right mix is. But yeah, the longer it goes, the harder it becomes, just finding out where you can inject yourself. And the way we try to handle it here is, as I was saying, is it's a 24-hour mission here. And so my work schedule isn't always conducive to being a part of things. And so I go in at about 5 a.m. and I get done, late in the afternoon here. And so I'll get a call once they get up and basically finishing breakfast. We'll do a FaceTime call, and I'll get to see her finishing up breakfast and talk to her, say good morning. But that's a quick call because that's in the middle of my day. And then before she goes down for a nap, and then same thing in the evening while they're finishing up dinner. And so we try to keep those same things that we did at home, or, after dinner, a lot of times we do after dinner dance party. And so we'll throw a song on the speakers and dance around the living room. And so we try to do that So she'll run over and say, play the song, play Fine by Me. And so then we dance in the living room, and I dance in the hotel room to kind of keep that going before she goes to bed and before I go to bed.
Yes, it's interesting. It sounds like you're trying, as much as you can and as much as time will allow to just maintain some of the normalcy of what you would be doing if you weren't deployed right now.
Yeah, the dad things that you like to do, as you guys talked about on previous episodes, the roughhousing, the playing around, the goofing around, that was the stuff that I love to do at home, coming home from work, that you don't get to do now. And so it's, you try to do that over FaceTime of, okay, I'm gonna act like I'm doing it, and mom's gonna try to do it, but it's not the same. So you do as much as you can that seems normal to them too.
There's sort of this immediate nature to your line of work, meaning that I would imagine when you're going to get deployed, you don't have all that much notice, right? It could be a few days or a few weeks, and I would imagine that it's probably the same coming home, right? Maybe you have some rough idea of when you'll be home, but not an exact day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's honestly less than that. We got told plan for 90 days, but there's discussions ongoing. And so it could be tomorrow I get told, hey, you're going home. Or it could be, 2 weeks from now. So yeah, this one especially is really an unknown. The deployments, the true deployments, overseas type things, those are much more planned out. And you have a much closer idea of when the deployment will start and when you'll come home.
It must be hard to not get their hopes up that you're going to be home at a certain time when it actually could be 2 weeks or 2 months later than you originally thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And as much as it goes for the kids, it goes for your wife at home too. She is ready to, in this case especially, she's ready to get me home. But it's the same thing is you don't want to tell too much, you don't want to tell too little. And so this was one that we, for our daughter in this instance, I didn't tell her till the morning I was leaving that I was going to be gone for a while because one, it was changing. This was a developing situation that we were trying to still figure out how we were getting here, what we were doing when we were leaving. And, the date had shifted from Friday to Saturday to Sunday to possibly Monday. And so we didn't say anything until, bags were basically packed in the car. She came up for breakfast. I sat and had breakfast with him and said, okay, Dad's got to go. Dad's got to go for a while. I'll see you soon.
Did that even register for her at that moment, or was it something that hit her later?
I don't think it did. She was still excited. We were playing all morning, until the moment I walked out the door. And so, Raina took her in and pulled her map out, her interactive map she has. And so she says, okay, this is where Daddy is now. Daddy's going to Texas. Where are we? And so it's a teaching thing, but it doesn't, I don't think it registers all the way that I'm not going to come home tomorrow, but she's young enough that I think it doesn't register all the way to truly understand what that means.
Like one of the things we talk about a lot on the podcast is,
hey, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I see. Yeah.
Raina's trying to FaceTime. I'm sure that hey, I'm on a Zoom call with Mark for the podcast.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, Raina.
Mark said
you
hi.
Can hear me?
Can you tell me how to open the cartridge on this? Like, where is the thing?
It's on the side.
On this, like out here?
Yep. Pull that part right.
No wonder.
This is great. This is a first in Modern Dadhood history.
I'll talk to you later.
She's gone.
Wow.
Had to fix the printer.
That's
real life.
That's that normalcy we're talking about.
So of course probably the week after I left, I get a picture of the hot water heater going, hey, is it supposed to be leaking like this?
Oh no.
It sure is. See you in 90 days.
Yeah. So we had, so again, going back to that neighbor thing, we had one of our neighbors came over and replaced the safety valve and fixed it for us, cleaned it out, fixed it, put a new one back on for us.
So yeah, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, I'm realizing that, one of the things that we talk about sometimes on this podcast is that like we tend to, I think, whether it's happening subconsciously or not, sort of shape the types of parents, the types of dads that we are a little bit in the image of our own upbringing. In your situation, neither of your parents were in the military. Your mom wasn't like a sniper or anything that I don't know about, right?
We can't talk about that.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Rita and her cookies. Yeah, yeah. No, she was not. My dad was though.
What? Okay, so that was okay. So I was going to ask that question. Was he? Because I never knew him as being in the military. So it must have happened a long time ago.
So what's funny is I knew my dad was in, but I never knew any details, anything until after I had already decided I was joining and really had signed my contract. Is the first time he really talked about it. But yeah, he was in during Vietnam. He went to flight school as well. And he didn't finish it because he got about halfway through and they got to what they call instrument phase, where you're just flying by the instruments in the aircraft, and was out on one of those on a solo flight, got weather, and basically was in what we call 0-0 conditions, where you can see 0 feet in front of you and 0 feet above you, and you're flying truly off your instruments, talking to the tower, and they basically wrote him off because at the hour level that he had at the time, most people are not able to fly like that. You get yourself disoriented and you crash the aircraft and most times kill yourself. So he got himself into that situation, ended up landing safely back in the middle of the airfield, but shook him up and was like, I'm done flying. And so he did his rest of his deployment, or his time in the Army, and ended up getting out after 3 years. Never talked about it. Was never a thing that he pushed on me, or even I said talked about at all, until I had already made my decision that that's what I was going to do. But yeah, it was never never a military lifestyle, never anything that I knew or thought about, besides the fact that we, where we grew up, you had the helicopters flying over all the time, and you see it as you drive through the gap, but it was never something that as a kid, even into high school, that I thought I wanted to do.
Well, I was just going to ask, have you ever had a conversation with your dad about why he never brought up the military up until you joined yourself?
We did talk about it, and it was again after I'd already signed my contract, knew what I was going to do, and was already in flight school that we really talked about a lot of this stuff. I don't think it was so much that he was trying to hide or protect me from something. It was more to kind of let me figure it out on my own of what I wanted to do. And so, he was in during Vietnam, never went to Vietnam. He was in Germany, stateside in Germany during the time that he was in, but it was more to kind of figure it out on my own. And I appreciate that looking back. We had our challenges when I was in high school, and because they wanted me to stay in state, stay close to home, stay somewhere in Pennsylvania. And I knew that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so there was a lot of headbutting going on there, and kind of figuring out our way. So I appreciate the fact that once I got there, he kind of let me figure it out on my own of what I wanted to do, and didn't push me one way or the other with that. And so I definitely, looking back, appreciate that.
So I would imagine that it's going to be different for your daughter, because you sit down and tell her daddy's going to be going away for a while, and and I'm sure that you'll continue to do that using whatever language is appropriate at whatever age that she is. What do you hope that your daughter will take away from her memories and understanding of your deployments when she's grown, and your decision to be part of the military?
I think that as we've, as Raina and I kind of talk about where we want to go, what we want to do next, and 17 years in, you get closer to thinking about what the next step is, because, retirement could be 3 years down the road from military service, and then what comes next. And so we talk about that and what we want for her. This lifestyle is not easy for the kids, for the families as a whole, for me, for Raina. The time away is hard for everyone. And so you start to think about what you want out of it. Now, there is a lot of great things that come from military service for me, for the families. And I think there's the kids, get that resiliency, especially as you do the moves, the time away. It builds the resiliency to kind of understand, hey, there's bigger things going on, number one. And two, you gotta figure out how to handle these emotions, how to develop these friendships quickly, because in a year, sometimes you have a year that you're at one spot, sometimes you have 3, sometimes you have less than that, and and you're up and moving. And so, the resiliency that you can build in the kids, I think, is important. And you watch the military kids. Fortunately, this is the first move that Abrielle has done, is from DC to Kansas City, and she's young enough that she may or may not remember any of it. If I decide to retire at 20 years or whatever, we'll do at least one more. So she'll get that experience again. But the resiliency that you see in military kids, I think, is awesome. And it's something that I'm glad we'll be able to give to her. Putting down roots is as awesome as that is too, is being able to pick up and go and see the world and look at it as an adventure versus, I'm getting ripped out of, my friends and my family. What else is out there that you can experience? Let's check this out. This culture that is new to all of us. We learn it, we do it together. But you build that as a family, and you figure out how you do these moves, how these things together. And so the adventures of, I didn't have my daughter during my deployments, but I had my nieces and nephews. And so, you bring home the different trinkets and things, the deployment stuff that you get from the stops around the world. I mean, for my daughter, I've been fortunate, traveling around. In my last job, I've been able to pick up books, and that's what we've kind of done, is I've picked up books from all the different places. So she's got books from Italy. She's got books from Lithuania. She's got books from Ukraine. She's got books from all over the world that, they can bring home, and we look at it now and go, oh, this is from Italy. And she sees the pictures and go, oh, Daddy was in Italy.
That's super cool.
I don't think there's a lot of 2.5-year-olds that know, what Italy looks like, or, can name the Eiffel Tower, because she's got pictures of Mom and Dad in front of it.
I'm reminded of one of our previous episodes with a guy by the name of Justin, who spends a little bit of time each summer living fully on a boat with his family. Oh, you look at you, man.
Yeah.
Super fan over here. But he talked a lot about that. He talked a lot about resiliency with his kids. I mean, you plunk kids into a different, I mean, I don't want to use words like normal, because your normal is your normal and my normal is my normal. But I guess maybe what average people would think of as like my regular old life. If you take kids out of that and put them into something that's got a different structure, around what it means to be a family, and to live in a home, what that really means to them. When you alter the parameters of that a little bit, I think it starts to create this environment where, like you said, you start to build a little bit of resiliency. It's interesting. It's cool. It's going to be really interesting to see, how that takes shape in your daughter's life.
Yeah. As much as I look for it, and that was one of the big things that I always wanted, was the traveling. I mean, that's why I left home and really have never been back, and for any kind of permanent move back home. But that's what I wanted. And so I enjoyed and I embraced that. And so, yeah, I definitely want to impart that on my daughter, and hope that she sees it the same way. But at the same time, being away, that's part of the job as well. And so, I know that there's times where I'm going to be away. It definitely gets much harder as they start growing up, and they acknowledge your presence, and they know when you're gone. Mm-hmm. And so it makes a much bigger hole in the family, and the normalcy that you do have, whatever that looks like, that hole gets bigger when you're not there. And so that becomes harder, and that's harder for me being away, of knowing that I'm not there. And so it changes the dynamic, and the desire to, for that lifestyle, for the desire to serve, really gets challenged of, why you're doing this job, why you're doing what you do. And there's days where you're like, yeah, this is why. And then there's other days you wonder, what am I doing? My family's back at home, and they need me just as much as everybody else does. So, it's definitely a struggle sometimes.
You think about the military, there's often a lot of very young people involved in the military, and oftentimes a lot of young families that get sort of thrust into these types of situations that we've been talking about. Since you've gone through it a little bit, what's one piece of advice you would give to a new young father who hasn't gone away yet, but sort of needs to prepare themselves for that time when it comes?
So it's a great question, Mark. The deployments are hard, and it's harder for the family at home than it is for the service member that is deployed. It is much harder for the family at home. And I use the perspective of a deployed soldier to Afghanistan, Iraq, somewhere overseas versus what I'm doing currently. But it would still hold true essentially here, I think, a little bit as well. I think Raina would probably tell you it's the same now. But it's harder for them because there's the unknown, right? They don't know what you're doing. They don't know if you're safe, if you're not, what job it is you're truly doing, especially again in Iraq, you're outside the wire. There's that threat of being hurt, being injured by an enemy force, somebody. They don't know, and you have confidence in what you're doing and your abilities and in the job that you're doing, and that how well you're doing and how much risk you truly are in. But they don't, and so until you call and say I'm okay, they don't know, and so it's much harder being on that side. And so the advice is to put yourself kind of in that position and think about it that way. That it's much harder for them than it is for you, and so the more you can communicate, the more you can make the effort. And it is hard because you're there to do a job. You absolutely are. And it is hard to step away from that. And it's very easy to get sucked in completely where you've got to focus on the mission and the job that you're doing, but you gotta take the time to make the effort and make the call home, write the email, do the call when you can to make sure that the family knows that you're okay, because it is that much harder for them than it is for you. I'll say I was fortunate. My 3 overseas deployments were, I didn't have kids for the first one. As you know, I was married at the time, since divorced, but with her, let me be clear on that, ex-wife there, not current wife. And so she was military as well. So that we were, and for part of it, we were deployed together. So very different dynamic there. Second one, I was same thing. We were both deployed together, and then the third one, I was single, divorced at the time, and so it was just me that I was worried about. And then I've done a couple rotations like this, this type of deployment to Europe for a couple months, 4 or 5 months with Raina at home and no kids. So very different dynamics than on those previous ones.
So your daughter has never known you to be in combat.
Correct.
Do you have conversations about that side of serving in the military? Violence, weapons, guns, that sort of thing?
No, we haven't. I'm sure that will come up eventually. She sees me come home every day in my uniform. There are guns in the house, they're in the safe. So that is, that's part of my lifestyle, part of, what we do. And that discussion will come up. She sees my flight helmet up on the shelf. She sees she sees that stuff, and she knows, Daddy's in the Army, and she knows that I fly a helicopter, but she's not there yet. But like I said, I expect in the next couple of years, we'll definitely be having those conversations.
That particular part of it, the combat side, the fact that it's sort of inherently a violent thing, the fact that there are guns and stuff involved, is that something that Raina was familiar with? Yeah, no, she was not. I mean, my family, Mark. We got we grew up with that, having guns around. It wasn't my dad hunted, my grandpa. We would go hunting. I was never much of a big hunter, and so it was somewhat of a change for me as well. I mean, I didn't buy my first firearm until I was after my first deployment, I think, and that was 3 years into my time in the Army. But Raina, no, we were married for about a year before she ever fired a gun, and it was definitely not anything that she had in her family growing up. But since then, again, she has her own pistol that she has, and it's been a while since we've gone to the range or anything, and it's not something we do a lot, and that's not something she enjoys, I would say. But she's familiar, she's comfortable with it. It will be something, I think, in our family. Mm-hmm. But even for me, it's not something that I have a concealed carry license. I don't carry a weapon most times, or hardly ever, and it's not something that's lying on top of the dining room table every night. But yeah, it's definitely something that will be around our family and a discussion to have at a later date. You don't just ominously clean your gun in the corner by one banker's light
with the list and the lipstick in the corner. You know,
yeah.
For my no, that's not.
You're not just fully
right
messed
now.
up in the head.
I tend to think I'm okay. Raina may tell you otherwise, but I tend to think I came out of it okay so far.
All right, Kevin. So fast forward. Try to put yourself in the position of 15 or 16 years from now. If your 2.5-year-old daughter is now 17, 18, and expresses interest in serving in the military in some capacity, what do you think your reaction will be to that?
It would. So I hope that much like my dad did for me is he, kind of step aside, put my feelings aside. Again, I think the way our family is going right now, I will probably retire before that point in time. And so, another 3 years, we potentially retire. And she knows me as doing something else other than being an Army officer. Mm-hmm. And so that's not a lifestyle necessarily that she grows up with and remembers. And so if she makes that decision on her own, I don't think, looking again, I've had a good experience of being and serving in the Army, and it's done a lot of great things for me. And so as a female, that's a different dynamic as well for her of coming into the Army or the military service as a whole. I don't think it would be something I would stop her. I would definitely have a discussion with her of, some things to consider, some things to think about. But it's not something I would stop her from doing or necessarily advocate for her. If that's where she wants to go, then by all means, I'll support her if that's what she wants to do. I hope. And I say that, who knows where we are in 15 years.
There's a lot of time between now and when she's 17, 18 years old.
Absolutely. But no, it's been a roller coaster for me. I've had a great experience and some great opportunities that I wouldn't trade. And hopefully, that's something that would impart for her. I mean, again, it's taught me a lot about myself, what I want to do, how I want to do it, and a lot of great life skills that I've learned.
Is there a certain camaraderie that exists among the other Army dads?
I think your question quota was up, Mark.
Uh-oh.
No.
Did I just trip over into uncomfortable territory?
No, yes. And you see it especially on things like this where, in the middle of the day, I'll sit at my computer now, or I'll step onto the hallway and take a FaceTime call. I mean, so you see that and you talk about it. Hey, what are your kids up to today? What's the wife doing with the kids today? So yeah, I mean, there absolutely is that camaraderie with it. I think probably for the longest time, we're a little bit older now, and you made mention of it earlier, Adam, with your question of the younger families, the younger kids. I was a little bit on the other end of the spectrum where, an older officer with no kids, you get that question all the time. Hey, are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids? And so that question comes up. And then once you do, now you're what you're considered a senior officer, and now you've got a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, which isn't the norm. There is, especially for the guys that have the kids the same age, you definitely see that. So there's that connection.
Kevin, first and foremost, thank you for all that you've done for this country in your career. It's been a long one, and you're a good guy, and I'm very proud to call you.
Now you're just lying.
It's the only time I'm going to say it, so you better let me get through it.
Don't cry.
I'm very proud to call you my friend, and I know you're a good person. I know you're a great dad. And thanks for being on this show. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I enjoy what you guys do. I've been, listening since you told me I had to. No, but I appreciate you guys you having me on, spending the time. And the last thing that I'm going to say is a huge shout out to my wife because for these times for me, again, it's extremely hard being away and you miss those things, but. The awesome part is I know what she's doing back at home and the job she's doing, taking care of our daughter, picking up the role that, the dad role that I have. She has to pick that up along with doing all her other stuff that she's doing. And so, especially in the times like right now where she's, stuck at home, I don't envy her and of what she's going through without me there. But I know she's doing an awesome job. And so I truly appreciate what she's doing to allow me to do what I'm doing. Again, appreciate you guys and all you're doing for us dads out there. I enjoy listening to the new episodes coming out. Particularly enjoyed the Ninja Turtle one recently. That brought back a lot of old memories there and a lot of good times. So I appreciate that one as well.
Kevin, thank you so much. Hope you stay safe and get home to your family soon.